to all of you. Today, we have this is the welcome all to the newest edition of the research forum conducted by the Comparative Literature Department EFLU. We have been doing this monthly one uh, discussion since 2017, and I welcome all of you to the newest edition of it. So today we have a presentation by Harshitha and Nirmal, and it is on ChatGPT, A bots, and whatnot. I welcome Harshitha and Nirmal to the session, and I hope I'm sure we will have a very productive discussion after the presentation. And I welcome all you to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Apu. Thank you for that welcome. Nirmal, would you like to start?
Yeah. Uh, a few years ago, I had written a paper that looked at a collection of AI characters in mainstream film through the lens of posthumanism. And it was during the research for that paper that I first encountered the term technological singularity. The technological singularity is a term popular among posthumanists and proponents of artificial intelligence and can be defined as a theoretical condition that could arrive in the near future when a synthesis of several powerful technologies will radically change the realities in which we find ourselves. Most notably, this turning point will be marked by the exponential advancement of computer programs and AI being able to transcend human intelligence, thus erasing boundaries between it and humans. While quite compelling, the singularity remains a theoretical point in time and quite a subjective one since there is no real consensus on what a radically changed reality would look like. But in the past 1 year or so, the larger public has been caught unawares by a sudden spike in AI advancement. Applications like ChatGPT and Midjourney have gone viral and have accumulated millions of users within mere months. Artists and writers are apparently panicking at what these programs portend. News outlets publish articles seemingly every day about AI replacing jobs. Has the technological singularity arrived? And because the field of AI and its applications are too vast, we would be narrowing down our focus and mainly looking at what is known as generative AI, its capabilities, and what it could mean for the humanities. So, firstly, what is AI? Can we have the first slide? Right. Artificial intelligence is a wide ranging branch of computer science concerned with building smart machines capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence. But artificial intelligence is somewhat of a problematic term. It can also be noted that the intelligence here is more often than not assessed by the correctness of the outcome or the output rather than emotional intelligence or any actual simulation of human processes. They are able to follow instructions, these applications, and they carry out fully or partially some of the tasks that humans have been performing until now. And so it can be a bit of a misnomer to call these technologies intelligence. The next slide. Machine learning, or ML, is a more accurate term to describe what is most often labeled as AI. ML is a branch of computer science that seeks to use data and algorithms to imitate the way that humans learn. And it enables computers to automatically learn from past data without a programmer having to feed it every individual instruction. However, AI is a more catchy term and is often used to market ML products. Like a tech company CEO might foreground their use of analytics and ML, but the marketing would most likely brand these as AI. Machine learning models are now able to learn and perform a lot of tasks through the development of associated technologies and methods like neural networks, deep learning, self supervision, reinforcement learning, and etc. Uh, the next slide. So, the kind of AI that is seen in the thinking human like robots in science fiction is more accurately termed as artificial general intelligence, AGI, and refers to an autonomous system that surpasses human capabilities in the majority of economically valuable tasks. A system is called AGI if it's able to transcend its initial instructions and produce something new on its own. AGI, despite news of like sparks of it being noticed by researchers in like GPT-4, it is still quite theoretical, and we have not reliably achieved anything close to it. Moving on to the next slide. And now ChatGPT. I am sure most of you know what this is, or at least you've heard about what it is. But ChatGPT, which you can expand to like generative pre-trained transformer, is a natural language processing tool created by a company called OpenAI. It takes a GPT technology created by OpenAI and presents it as a conversational chatbot that can answer questions and perform a variety of similar tasks. Since its launch in November 2022, it has garnered a lot of public attention and has become the center of discourse around AI technologies and its future application. Now, there are also terms like large language models, LLMs, or generative AI, which are relevant when discussing applications like ChatGPT. And I think Harshita would be a better person to uh, lead us through those terms.
Yeah. Before I get into large language models and also different tools that use AI in order to help us with education. So I basically do research on using AI for the purpose of education. So what I'll be talking about today will be related to that. Before I get into the tools that can be used, I want to clarify what is the difference between a model and a tool. So already Nirmal told us what is AI, what is machine learning, etc. So what we need to know is that how does any application have the ability to do these things? What is the process that it undergoes when it tries to learn from a data set, and how does it perform various functions based on what it has learned? This is defined by the model, and the AI model is created by a group of people like us. So a team of people who work together to create these models will design it based on what parameters it should consider from the data set that it is being supplied with, and what are the techniques that it's going to use to make sense of this data, and then use whatever it has learned to create or generate something. So examples of models, we've already talked about GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. These are examples of models. But how do we as users make use of these models? We need applications which will make use of these models. So ChatGPT is an example of an application which will use the GPT 3.5 or the GPT-4 models. So the tools that I'm going to be talking about are also applications like that, which work on various kinds of AI models. One example is the automated tutoring system. So we would have come across apps like Memrise or Duolingo, which helps people to learn new things. So these tools basically create individualized learning path for people. It tries to ask people a bunch of questions and then decide what the person may or may not know and how best that person can be taught something new. So, for example, if you take Duolingo, it's an app that works based on a model called the half life regression model, which tries to track how much time it takes for a person to forget something that they have learned and when they must be reintroduced to the same concept or word in order to help them remember it for a longer time. Then we also have different tools that can be used for assessment. So we have adaptive testing, which basically means that the test will sort of adapt itself to varying levels of complexity based on how well the learner knows something, and it will also provide feedback based on this assessment. An example is the Duolingo English test. So now the question that a lot of people keep asking nowadays, if an AI can be used to tutor people, test people, and provide feedback, does that mean that AI can replace teachers? Can it replace people who are in the profession of doing all of these things? So I think that generally people say no, but I think that there are certain situations when the answer could be yes. So if you look at real life classrooms, you have a lot of places where people don't have access to good teachers. People have people have teachers who are given multiple subjects to teach where they may not have the expertise in. They also have situations where the classroom size is very large and the teacher is unable to give attention to a lot of the students in the classroom. In these kind of situations, rather than these learners not having any access to information, it would be a good idea for them to have access to AI based tools that will provide them with an opportunity that they would not have had otherwise. But of course, there are drawbacks, there are certain limitations and challenges that must be addressed in using something like this in classrooms. Then there's also gameplay. So you if you have studied game narratives, you know that there would be a game document that details what are the various scenarios that the playing character would be placed in based on the decisions that they make. These situations are part of the narrative which is written by a human being usually. So in AI games like AI Dungeon, what you would have is the machine generating multiple possibilities, which means that every time you play the game, you might encounter something different created by an algorithm. But in this sense, it may not always be the same as what would happen in the kind of games that we're used to playing. So there needs to be some research that looks into these kind of narratives and how the experience of playing a game that involves AI generated scenarios is different from the use of a normal game where we have just a few limited scenarios that were created by a human. Then there's machine translation. So we are all used to Google Translate, but of course, the way that a machine translates is very different from the way that a human translates. So in the case of a machine, you would give this machine a lot of texts in, say, language A, and the translations created by a human in language B. And by comparing this data set, it would try to recreate patterns that it finds in this data set. That's how the translation happens in machine translation, which is nothing like what happens when human beings try to translate. Then there's, of course, chatbots, which is self explanatory. Then there's large scale data analysis. Now, this is where we need to introduce the concept of bias. So, you would have come across this term a lot, especially in recent times. So, let me try to explain this by using an anecdote. There are different versions of this anecdote that you'll find in different sources. One version of it is where this algorithm was trained to identify cars in photographs, and in order to do so, the algorithm was introduced to a bunch of photos that had cars and a bunch of photos that did not have cars. And then, based on these photographs, after being trained, the team tried to introduce new photographs and ask the algorithm to say whether or not there was a car in this photo. But this algorithm failed. After a lot of trying to find out what went wrong, they found out that the reason why the machine was not able to identify the cars was because the photos that were taken of the car, the photos that were taken with a car were taken on a cloudy day, and the photos that were taken without a car were taken on a sunny day. So as a result, the parameters that the algorithm tried to pick up on was whether the photograph had a sunny day or a cloudy day. So the context is important. Where we place the car is important, and that is of particular relevance when we look at large scale data analysis in different fields, especially in the field of education. We must be clear on what kind of data we are providing to the algorithm and training it based on, so that it does not pick up certain biases that may be unintentional, but will have a significant impact on the way that the education system will work. Then there's large language models. So, as Nirmal was talking about this earlier, this is a kind of model that is primarily used for natural language processing. So, in this, we use a very large quantity of data, and by identifying patterns in this data, we try to generate responses that appear to be like what a human would say. So examples of this are GPT and Bard. And if we look at earlier models, we had the earliest model coming out in the 1980s by IBM. Later in 2010, we had Google's Google Brain, which was also used for image recognition and natural language processing. And in 2018, we had OpenAI coming up with the first model of GPT, which subsequently led to the models that we have already discussed, 3.5 and 4. So my question to Nirmal is this: so we have already seen language models growing as time goes. What is it that caused this hype over the past few months that sort of brought so much of limelight on these particular models that we were discussing?
Right. So, like I mentioned, something that makes ChatGPT special is the kind of attention it, received and the kind of reactions it sparked in major players in the field. So, major tech companies like Google and Microsoft, they're now racing to implement AI in all of their products. And Google executives have reportedly been saying that they are afraid of this new technology that would make them irrelevant. However, much of this is simply hype, so that these brands they remain relevant in the public eye. Anyone who has used ChatGPT for more than a few minutes has likely encountered a factual error, a logical mistake, inability to do certain simple tasks, or straight up falsification of data. Some of its failings can be chalked down to the fact that it has no access to pre trained data beyond September 2021. But most of it is because all the program is a probabilistic guessing machine. So the large language models that she explained now, they basically are trained once before they are launched, and then they don't take in any data that comes through the later interactions. That's what they call pre-trained. And because the model that ChatGPT is built on has only access to 2021 September, a lot of its information can be outdated and even wrong. Uh, ChatGPT is not a search engine, DJ, friend, or teacher. What it can do is take words you provide and guess what word comes next, in which two it may fail occasionally. So why then are we, or at least a lot of us, so impressed by what these machines can do? And I admit that both ChatGPT and image generators like Midjourney fascinated me greatly. A lot of it has to do with our expectations. Going in with expectations formed from our previous experiences on the internet do not quite prepare for the NLP capabilities of the chatbot. How it can seemingly parse our informal text inputs and reply almost in kind. ChatGPT impressed us because we expected so little from it. And there is also the matter that a lot of the text that it produces, which to it is probabilistic word soup, ends up being meaningful to us because we are trained to catch meaning in words that look like a human had written it. And because we were not yet using it in any of our work processes, its holes were not immediately apparent. For example, I remember when in like second grade, I first discovered how to use Google Images, and it was an amazing resource. It was like endless visualization possibilities. But last month, I searched for half an hour on Google Images for the perfect image of a black flag. So ChatGPT 2 similarly reveals its flaws as we go, as our expectations are tempered, and as our needs are more than just that it's entertaining to have a robot write you poems. So while I want to stop engaging in and dispel some of the fear mongering that surrounds this new technology, especially regarding the creative powers of LLMs and image generators, I do not want to undermine their potential. It is not AI, ML, or automation that we must ultimately fear, but those who will want to use it purely to drive profit margins. As for replacing jobs, I'm sure that companies will try their best to cut costs using ML programs instead of employees, and soon discover why it was never a feasible option. These programs were trained on the internet and on collections of old text and images. In a way, their training data is a culmination of all human work, art, and knowledge creation. People and companies looking to replace all human endeavor with this kind of automation will eventually run out of data to train the models and will have to end up cannibalizing the outputs of the AI models themselves, which is a surefire way to quickly degrade the quality of all future outputs. And if you're looking at AI and ML as such a culmination, we must also look at them as a channel, conduit, and tool for further human creation. AI cannot actually create anything, but it is quite powerful when it's used to support, enhance, and complement. It has the power to automate or speed up many minor tasks that we spend a lot of time doing. Brainstorming, getting started with a draft, for example. Image generators can also greatly speed up repetitive and tedious processes in the animation industry, already overworked and underpaid. So how does this kind of processes, this kind of automation, this kind of enhancement make its presence known in the classroom?
Yeah. So I think that, like you said, a lot has been happening in the past few months, and we have new tools that are coming into the market almost on a daily basis. So what happens is that the tech is developing too fast for us to be able to catch up to it. I think the open letter that came out recently from the Future of Life Institute, which called for a pause in this kind of development, also tried to talk about how we need time. We need to have some sort of uh, safety protocols in place before we continue developing these models further. And I think that that's relevant even in education, because right now, by the time a teacher is trained or is able to upskill themselves in order to use these kind of tools in the classroom, something new has already come out. And also what we have is a lot of teachers who are now quite confused on this. So what they do is they decide to straight out ban the usage of AI tools in the classroom, and this does not really prepare learners for what's happening outside. And also it does not really have much of an effect. When you tell students not to use something, they're going to find another way around it. If you tell students not to use ChatGPT to write essays and submit it, they're going to find tools that are better than ChatGPT now. And that's reality. So if that's what's happening in classrooms, then maybe we should think about ways in which we can communicate to teachers, communicate to students about what exactly these developments mean, how we can prepare them for using these, what are the things that they must keep in mind in order to safely use these tools, what are the considerations that they must have in mind when they go on to develop something in the future, things like that. For example, the question of whether the data that was used to train all these models was ethically sourced or not is something that still has not been resolved. So things like that, people need to have discussions like that in educational spaces in order to make people aware of what it means to use these models and what we are trying to do. And there's also the question of plagiarism. So, a lot of people initially said that to use AI to write things would be considered plagiarism. And later, I also saw that they had come up with a new term, AIism. So, plagiarism is basically when you copy something from a source and don't cite the source. But AIism is a little different. Here, the AI does not copy, it analyzes the patterns that are there in the data and tries to generate something similar to it. So it's not exactly copying, but it does borrow something from another source which is not being cited or referenced. So then, how do we deal with that? Recently, Microsoft had come up with this idea that in the future we would have models that would be able to not just cite or refer what style has been borrowed or what patterns have been borrowed from which source, etc., but also be able to provide some sort of monetary support to the source from where the data is being used. Then there are also claims that AI inadvertently created or generated content that resembles existing work. So you have these essays or blogs that were written by an LLM, which looks very similar to the articles written by somebody else, and that, even though it was not the intention, it's still something that people consider as plagiarism now. So there is the need to really sort out what we consider as plagiarism, how we can use these tools, and how we can cross check once we've written something, to make sure that we are not inadvertently doing things like this. And also there's also the non-reliability of AI detectors. So we have a lot of AI detectors today like GPT-0, but these are not really reliable. It does not really tell us exactly whether something was written by an AI or by a human. So we have, for example, GPT-0 said that the constitution of the US was written by an LLM. So we do have instances like that. So what we can do in educational spaces in classrooms is find ways to use it effectively. In a lot of classrooms, a lot of the students are going to eventually do things like writing repetitive emails, writing blogs on very similar topics, things like that. So if there is a choice that we can inform them that okay, you can reduce the time you spend on it or the effort that you put into this by using an AI tool, then yes, we definitely have to do that so that they're well prepared. But at the same time, we also need to tell them what it can do, what it cannot do, so that they will be the person who will do what the AI cannot do. Yeah. So speaking of how humans can work with AI and do things that AI cannot do, Nirmal recently introduced me to this term called human in the loop. Can you talk a little bit about that, Nirmal?
Yeah, we can also go to the next slide actually. Right. So there is a term in the AI ML field known as human in the loop, referring to models and systems that require human interaction to complete its tasks. It is often associated with like automated weaponry that could lead to catastrophe if left unsupervised. But I feel it's quite relevant for verification as well. As AI tools become more prominent in the workplace, a mistake could have far reaching ramifications. Human in the loop, I think, is also the right approach for us going forward. Undoubtedly, the required skill sets for jobs will evolve. Like we mentioned, how students would, eventually use these tools, and according to that, assessment would have to evolve. The required skill sets for jobs will also evolve, as it was bound to. But the human in the loop cannot be replaced. As much as these technologies play a role in the democratization of being able to produce art, etc., human skill and knowledge will continue to remain a very important requirements to do a good job. Not only in needing to keep creating new content that future models can be trained on, but also to verify the outputs generated by AI tools. Even though ChatGPT is able to generate programming code like no application before, it still takes the knowledge of a trained professional to know what to ask for, to verify the generated code, and to implement it properly. With respect to writing too, these tools can often make simple factual errors, create fake citations, and so on. All things that can only be spotted by somebody skilled. The company that I currently work for example, has a proprietary platform that they use to build custom solutions. They recently announced the integration of ChatGPT to the platform. However, it was made clear that the AI tool would primarily be used in summarizing complicated visual and mathematical data, something that used to take too much time for the engineers, and that all output would be verified by a human before being published. Now back to the question of whether we have arrived at a technological singularity. The short answer is no. However, it is true that we are at quite a turning point in the advancement of technology right now, and most observers are unable to say for sure whether it's at the peak or only the beginning of an upward curve. The technologies that we are talking about and their applications are progressing at paces that we've never seen before, and any research on these topics are becoming outdated before they can gain any momentum. AI and ML tools also bring with it a host of questions regarding ethicality, legality, and culpability. like Harshida mentioned, regarding the ethicality of the training data that was sourced, regarding certain copyright claims that artists have put forward that their art was used to train models that they did not want to. Uh, so, but none of which we have currently any real answers for. Just like research in this field, the technology is making progress far too quickly for ethics and law to keep up. And so it is only through discussion and deliberation that we will be able to arrive somewhere. The humanities has an important role to play in these deliberations. It cannot afford to stay away in fear or in disdain. As of right now, a balanced approach is what is required when it comes to AI. Balance between creation and automation, between excitement and hesitation. Keep humans in the loop, keep humanities in the loop. I think that's where we'll sort of close out what we had to present. And maybe we can, bring in a few questions that will obviously like open up a few more things that we can talk about. Uh, yeah, sure. I'm not sure what the context is for safety. If you want to clear that up, maybe you can just like unmute your mic and let me know. But like Harshida mentioned, there is definitely, bias that creeps into. Oh, privacy. The thing regarding privacy is as far as the current chat GPT's versions are, it does not record your conversations with it, and it cannot use that to learn from it. The only input it sort of takes right now is when you generate a response. Uh, there are there is a thumbs up and a thumbs down next to it, and if you give it a thumbs up, it'll take that sort of probabilistic word soup as a more likely instance rather than something else it might have done. So that's the only thing that it takes right now. So the only privacy issues that you can discuss with ChatGPT, I think right now is regarding the data that was used to train it, and that is not something I don't know. I have no sure answer to that because that was a private company, and I do believe that they have released a lot of the sources from where they got their data, but. I think when we think about privacy, we should be thinking about what comes next. What are the future models that are going to be trained on, data that could potentially be sensitive. Actually, I was reading something today regarding something called data democratization, especially in the healthcare industry. And some of the experts think that just blacking out sensitive information like name and address and stuff and all would make that data safe enough to use to train AI models. There are also systems, methods being developed like data clean rooms. These are all attempts to sort of uh, keep privacy while also pushing the technology forward. Harshita, if you have something to add on that avenue as well.
Yeah, I agree regarding the privacy part that you talked about. But in our classrooms, we do make it a point that when we are talking to students, especially young learners, we tell them that, as a part of the digital literacy sort of initiative, we try to tell them that it is always a good practice to not share private information with a bot, not just chat gpt per se. I'm just talking about bots in general, because we do have multiple llms nowadays.
I think the next couple of questions are also probably more
Right.
relevant to your
Yeah,
section.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So, future of teaching profession. I think that if if you consider the teacher as an individual who has already, you know, gone through significant amount of training and experience, they would really tell you how many tasks there are as a part of teaching that is repetitive and that can actually be automated, which should be a huge support to the teacher, which will free up a lot of time for them to do more creative things in the class, like coming up with fun activities, etc., by, say, automating the process of creating uh, question papers or correction, etc., based on a rubric that they would, co-create with an llm. Then there's also, the concept that we would be able to address the needs of students who don't really have access to teachers, so that in those situations we would definitely have, at least a part of the teaching process taken over by some sort of bot. So we have, for example, duolingo, which is already helping a lot of people learn languages that they've never had access to before. That can happen, but it would not really replace a teacher who, is physically present, is in connection with the, group of learners sitting right in front of it. That is probably not going to happen. Does plagiarism softwares like Turnitin cover content by AI? Yes. So Turnitin has recently started their own team which specifically looks into AI created content and whether it is there in like academic content. So they are one of those what do you say, detectors that are better than the others available on the market right now, but it's not 100% reliable. They still have mistakes, they're still working it out. So we also have a lot of paraphrasing tools available online that can still, get your content through this kind of detection. Then, yeah, I think the next question, maybe Nirmal, would you like to take that up?
Yeah. So just read that out. The ease with which AI can mimic humans has propelled governments around the world to consider how it could take away jobs, trick people, and spread disinformation. Is this true? So, regarding jobs, I briefly mentioned this when I was speaking as well. It will undoubtedly change jobs. It's not simple enough to say that will take away jobs. It will undoubtedly change the way a lot of work is done, and that comes with any kind of automation. A lot of uh, repetitive tasks that used to be done by people will become irrelevant. But as somebody said, this is the first thing that automation that has seemingly made the middle management worry, because the kind of work it does, like editing, proofreading, uh, that's the kind of work it does far better than actually creating content. That's the kind of work that middle management used to do. But it will take away jobs, and I do believe that a lot of companies will attempt to use it to replace jobs, but which I do not think will be a very sustainable thing going forward. And But yes, the next few years I think will be a bit rough. However, regarding tricking people and spreading disinformation, very much so. ChatGPT and easy content generation applications like this are the most helpful for scammers and people. So their reach is definitely widened, and that is why I think it's important for us to continue to push sort of internet literacy among everyone, starting from like lower classrooms, instead of sort of saying that this is not safe, I will not deal with it. It's important to sort of delve into it, understand what exactly is it, so that we can keep an eye out for it. If you have something else that you would like to add, Harshita, to that.
Yeah, I think to a large extent, the tricking people and spreading disinformation also happens because people are not really aware of, the use cases of this tool. And like you said, keeping the human in the loop will help in this scenario, and it's also very important for people in all professions now to sort of upskill so that they will be able to stay relevant as the tech keeps growing.
Somebody has a hand up.
Yeah, hi Nirmal and Harshita. My
Hey, hey,
question is
hi,
to
hi.
both of you. Since I personally haven't used ChatGPT before yet, so I don't know how true this is, but I've read in the news about how ChatGPT is taking over the entertainment industry and creative industry and how it's going to take away the jobs of writers and all that. My question was, do you think ChatGPT could render originality unimportant? Do you think this could make the idea of originality as something unimportant?
Did you say that it could make the idea of originality unimportant?
Like, for example, you have a writer who writes stuff,
Yeah.
but then you also have ChatGPT who can write stuff for you. So does it really matter what? So does it? So does the writer really matter here when you have ChatGPT doing this stuff for you?
So there is a lot of research, even dating back into like some of the very primitive LLMs, regarding the debate between creativity and generation, which is what most of these applications do. They they have a word, and they look at all the data it has, and looks at the probability of what is the word that is most likely to follow it. So the way it works, the current AI, ML, deep learning, all that, it cannot really produce something that is not in its data. It cannot produce something that is original. It can sort of rearrange it in very unique ways, but it will not be able to, have that originality of human experience. Harshida had really summed this up when we were discussing this once, and she said the computer does not experience. And if you're talking about entertainment industry, which is all about human emotions, about connecting to people, uh, do you really think people would continue to watch a lot of thing that is just sort of being just pumped out without any sort of human connection, that is simply rearranging words? uh, so I think, especially I think with the context of the writers strike that is happening right now in Hollywood, this is definitely a turning point. And like I said, with jobs, there are a lot of people who will try to do things with it and will create some kind of product to be consumed. But I do not think it will render originality irrelevant. In fact, if as more and more people, especially in the entertainment industry, start to use this a lot, originality will become a more scarce resource, and people will be craving more for originality rather than this becoming the norm. That is what I think.
Yeah, adding on to what Nirma said, recently we had this statement by OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. He was commenting on how scaling up will reach a plateau at one point, because if we just keep training the algorithms based on more and more data, we are eventually going to reach a plateau from where we cannot keep going forward. At that point is where, like Nirmal said, we will have this need for people, this need for people to be creative and bring in their own experiences. So if you have three writers, one who just uses ChatGPT to churn out repetitive content, one writer who does not use ChatGPT at all, and one writer who knows how to use ChatGPT and can also write, and is able to handle both, and in a way that maximizes whatever he's trying to do, then definitely the third person's gonna have the edge.
Also, just something that I quickly remembered because you mentioned entertainment industry. There is, I think it's still available. There's a Twitch channel that live streams AI generated Seinfeld episodes. It's just been fed a lot of, early 90s sitcom, and it just 24 hours just keeps playing what it generates. And that I think is an interesting experiment, and definitely technology, applications like this could be used in experimental manners, but on a very large scale as entertainment, as mainstream entertainment, I don't uh, think it will be a good thing for that to happen.
Right. Great answers, guys. Thank you. And great presentation, by the way. Right. It was very enlightening.
Yeah, Shabir, can AI deal with emotions? Okay, so let me give you an example. So if I tell ChatGPT that I'm feeling a particular emotion, and I also show it what are the possible ways in which it can react when I tell it that I'm experiencing that emotion, then it will be able to give a sort of appropriate response to me, but it won't understand what I'm really saying. So if I say I'm sad and I say it's okay for you to tell me, oh, what's up? Is everything okay? Then it will do something similar to that. But it may not say, oh, I'm happy that you're sad, something like that. But it will not really know what sad means.
There is also something called sentiment analysis, which not it's not just an AI thing, but generally it's used by companies to understand what is the general sentiment of their products in social media and other public forums. So basically, what that similar to these applications just picks up patterns, because if we are sad, then these are the related things that come with it. And like she said, the machine will not understand it, but it might generate an outcome that you think is appropriate, because there is a lot of instances of that kind of response. And the machine thinks, okay, this is a likely thing that is what it's required. So it will give you an outcome that may seem appropriate, but it doesn't mean anything to the machine itself.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I wanted to ask Harshita, what repetitive tasks are there in teaching that can be replaced by AI, do you think?
I was thinking of correction, like multiple choice questions, things like that.
Half a second. Multiple choice questions are done anyway. I mean, basically, multiple choice questions, you know how they are done and you know how they are set, right?
Yeah.
So, is that what you're trying to encourage?
No, 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 no. I'm not encouraging multiple choice questions. No,
No, this is a serious question because I can't think of anything.
no.
I knew
Okay.
you'd say that, but I knew you hadn't thought of how multiple choice questions are supposed to be set and how they really are set.
No,
So
I meant
basically,
that.
you're encouraging bad ethics
No.
there. Yeah.
Okay. What I meant was like For
Ah,
example,
mm.
you have an answer where you have a rubric and you say that, okay, are these things present in the answer? And then you will have the AI telling you what's present and what's not present. And then based on that, you can give a grade. Like Nirmal said, there's the human in the loop factor there, but still, it will still be able to read a lot in a very less time and just, give you, say, highlighted things. Like there are so many apps right now that can
Yeah,
read
I
PDFs. Yeah,
don't dispute that that is exactly what certain evaluation systems do.
yeah.
And just a second, students have a critique of that basically because the evaluation system is looking for the word and nothing else, which is exactly what AI is going to do, worse than the human in the loop. So, I mean, it's still bad ethics.
Uh, I think I can add that the students have the critique. So, I think what we are seeing right now is students using that automation themselves to give answers. That sort of makes the entire process invalid. And eventually the process would have to move on to something that, AI cannot replicate. So if the kind of questions that are being given to students are sort of cookie cutter and generalized and almost automated, then they start giving out automated answers using these. And I think that will eventually lead to a, you know, the entire that kind of question answer format being irrelevant altogether.
No,
And
I
then
mean,
we have to move forward.
yeah, I can see the discussion about the question part of it and your response that you just gave. I think that's actually irrelevant to the main thing that I'm trying to say, which is that this is not, it's technology, so it's like not one size fits all. There are certain things that cannot be taken into account by technology, and which is why I asked about teaching, because that's a human thing. Learning is ultimately a human thing on both sides. This is a tool that, which is why I wanted to know how it would be a tool to help the teacher. It's not going to help pedagogy in any way. It's
Um,
like chalk. Yeah, go ahead.
what I another way that we could think about it is like, for example, if you are thinking of grammar instruction, or you're trying to come up with a sentence that uses a word, or you're trying to write a passage that is for learners who are interested in a specific topic, or something like that, and you can edit and you can go in and make the changes, but you can also get a lot of options from it. You can use it for brainstorming, lesson planning, that sort of thing. But I definitely think that the teacher's role is still going to be very important, but they're the ones who are going to finally make the actual teaching learning process happen. But they could be supported by AI.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it can't be supported. It's just that at the moment, I cannot see how. Given, definitely given the way it works, and given what kind of an activity teaching and learning are.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, that there are, I'm sure there are places where it can be used without this ethical conundrum. But possibly teaching is not one of them. Is a speculation on my part. Thank you
Uh,
very much. Yeah,
just
go
one
ahead.
more thing. I was also, I think this is something she had brought up initially, where she, like, yes, teaching is the human thing, and there must be that connection. But uh, in our current condition, not every student gets that. Not every student gets the attention due to lack of teachers or something. And you know, for not thinking about a long time in the future, but for that, for the current brief moment, a lot of AI tools will be able to at least make that situation better. I think that is one way to look at it. What it would evolve to in like a time when these kind of constraints don't exist is not something we can say for sure now. But not every student gets the kind of attention that they should get from a teacher in order to develop properly. Not everyone gets the kind of materials. And also, it could also make access to just that kind of education a lot easier because, I mean, the pandemic sort of, you know, catalyzed a lot of digital learning. And so a lot of digital learning is quite poor and doesn't give you the kind of things you need. And in that kind of a situation, an AI, the kind of AI tools might be a better alternative than nothing at all.
Yeah, it's not that I disagree, but the point is that the way you design a particular tool depends on who the user is and what you want it to do. So
Mhm.
we are talking from the teacher's end of things. You're right when you say that in innumerable classrooms, in fact, in 95% of classrooms in India, the student does not get the attention of the teacher because there are just too many students. But despite all of that, that does not make the teaching activity AI friendly. I'm trying to say that possibly technology can be used by the student, but the student learns. It can't replace the teacher.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a
Yeah.
different, which is why I was trying to say that I think it's designed on the basis of the problem that it has to solve from whichever end it has to solve that
Mhm.
problem. I mean, it's not a there is no teacher in the classroom problem. That can't be solved by AI. The student can learn out of AI. AI can be like used as a dictionary, I think, where the student
Mhm.
actually learns on his own. It's not replacing, a robot or a teacher with a robot, that kind of a thing. That
No, no, for sure.
is
That
what
is
I
not what
think,
happens.
I mean, what I understood
No,
from.
for
Mm,
AI tools for teachers, I think would most likely would take the shape of things that will uh, reduce a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of office work that then they can then take that time to focus on the actual teaching itself. Like my mother, for example, teaches in a government school, and then there is a lot of extra work that comes with that, just sitting
yeah,
and copying grades.
right.
So all those things
Mm,
can be automated, which then
mm,
leaves time
mm,
for the teaching. And that
mm.
is, I think, what Harshita was talking about as well. And the kind of tool she showed was like you mentioned just now, more student friendly, the kinds of things that students can use. And from the teacher side, the problems are I'm not getting enough time to teach. And then the
Yeah, that.
solution would be to automate those things that
Agree.
do not require a human in the loop.
Mm, mm, mm. True. No, that is true. I mean, like, in the sense that is not part of what a teacher is supposed to be doing anyway. So that's a deeper problem which can be solved by AI, I think. Thankfully, yeah. I mean, because of the abstraction and the remoteness of it, and because of the generality, the human element which controls it completely is often lost. So it's easy to elide the ethical questions. I think that's a crucial thing in thinking about it. That we do forget that it's actually a human being that designs it and a human being who uses it. So I mean, it would be wonderful if AI could actually correct scripts, but it doesn't happen like that. Thank you very much.
I think right now the correcting scripts part, it's not really something that it's not exactly like how we would do as a human teacher, like you said. But what I found was that, like, for example, last year I think we had TCS coming up with this tool where they would have first this AI that would do optical character recognition on handwritten scripts, convert that into, say, text document form, and then the human teacher would be reading it and then analyzing it, or it would really be able to sort of pick and choose things that are there for highlighting for attention from the teacher, and then the human teacher would then go through it, kind of thing. So it's still an assistive role, it's not something that the AI would do by itself.
No, I mean, as long as it is actually useful, it is very welcome. But I mean, the core idea of quote unquote correcting a script, that doesn't, I mean, it's not possible. Actually, we do. OMR sheets are not corrected by us, right? So it's how you design the question that is the actual test on either side. Because OMR sheets are designed to just pick either numbers or letters, whatever it is that you have. Nothing else. Everything else happens between the text and the student. So how you create the text is, it's impossible for AI to do that, but AI does correct that script. I mean, I don't even have to touch it, basically. Or it doesn't help matters as far as I'm concerned, because I'm still having to think of the original. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to say. I think that addressed or addresses the question that Victor was also asking, which you guys really answered well regarding originality per se. We actually also did an exercise trying to identify a chat GPT poem. I think Harshita was there in that class with the BA people. Harshita, did you see the
Yeah,
poem?
I
Yeah.
I'm not sure I was there in that class, but I did this with another group recently,
Ah.
where we had two-line poems and their
Mhm.
translations, and we tried to have this poll on which of those were written by ChatGPT and which
Mm, mm.
written by a human. And they were not really able to, not like most of the poems, they were not really able to identify which ones were written by GPT.
Mhm.
um, but I think that that is because of the fact that when we read something, if we don't know whether it was written by ChatGPT or not, if it was it doesn't outright have factual inaccuracies
No,
and
no,
all of that.
we tend to assume that it isn't written by
Yeah,
ChatGPT,
yeah, we tend to
obviously.
assume first that it was written by a human, and then the reading
Mm,
will not really be based on
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is it I think it depends completely on the poem, because the ones that we identified, somehow we could find out for some reason. It was totally in everybody's imagination, of course. but there were particular things because of the fact that they were so familiar and because there was very little defamiliarization per se, that we came to the conclusion that this must be Chat GPT. You know,
That's
that
like the
was,
Turing test thing. That's like the Turing test thing all over again.
yeah. It's just like that. It's affect at the end of the day. Somebody asked that also. In fact, that's exactly the point. That I mean, the reason why ChatGPT can't teach is because it can't learn. It's the same as what you said about it not being able to experience. So there it goes.
I think it's also the matter of it is created purely to generate the most familiar
Uh-huh.
response. That is,
Uh-huh.
it's all a numbers game. It's a thing of
Yeah.
likelihood of probability.
Mm-hmm.
So that the very thing of defamiliarization goes against it unless you specifically ask it to, or you give it some kind of you say this one is not good enough, and you keep regenerating responses. Unless that, you will never get something that is unlikely.
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Mm. Mm.
I think so. While I did mention that these models are pre-trained, uh, I do believe there is something called augmentation training or something similar where you can take your own data set and now it has a base capability, and you can feed it a specific data set and you can ask it to specifically refer to that data set to create something new. And now this is not something that is, it would still have the same problems within humanities, I think, but like for, uh, I'm thinking of image generation and animation and stuff like that. It's definitely artistic things, but you are able to create longer animated content by just giving it sort of 12 to 16 frames that you yourself drew, and then to just do it in this style. So that is something it is able to do. But this again, I had asked Harshita, is it's imitating, it's simulating. Do we not also learn by imitating? But this is not really what humans do. This is not what goes on in our heads when we learn or when we sort of reproduce what we learn.
Yeah, it's definitely not just that. When we learn something, it's not just about imitation.
It changes. I mean, notionally, it changes everything. We may not be aware of how it changes whatever it does when we learn something. So, I mean, it will be ridiculous if teaching jobs are threatened by ChatGPT because ChatGPT is not going to be able to do teaching jobs.
No,
So, other things may be
I just
other
feel
jobs. Yeah. Mm.
if there's I have personally come across a lot of teachers who are not able to do certain things because they're just not equipped for it. So if they are able to be supported by AI, then they might be able to do it better, but definitely doesn't mean that we can simply take off a human being and put a robot there.
Yeah, I guess then, that would be integrated in your training,
Yes.
the way
Yeah.
in which you think about everything, including setting multiple choice questions, and what that connotes to you as
Yeah.
wanting to understand. Yeah. Mm.
As Nirmal was saying, we'll definitely have to rethink how we assess people. We can no longer have the same kind of assessment rubrics that we used to have before, where we give 1 mark for introduction, 1 mark for conclusion, that kind of thing that is actually practiced in a lot of places.
Mm.
So we'll definitely have to rethink how we grade people um, when we get submissions. because we need to take into consideration that the things that we expected from a learner before could just be given by an AI. So we need to grade what the
Mhm.
student did
Right.
along with
Yeah.
AI.
Mm. Yeah. Mm.
I think it's just, when the internet became so prevalent that you have to take that into account when you're assessing and when you're teaching a student. I think this is also something that will have to be, like you said, integrated. And that is what I would like to stress, because a lot of people who feel threatened by this will choose to avoid it entirely. And I think that is the wrong kind of approach that will make you all the more outdated, sort of. So it has to, I think the people that feel that they will, their kind of work areas being invaded by this, they would benefit the most if they were able to like delve into it, understand what it can do, and sort of shape its development into what is most helpful for them, rather than leave it to, tech bros to dictate what the future of this
Yeah.
must
Yeah.
be.
Mm. Certainly. Mm. I mean, just developing an LMS, or at least being witness to developing an LMS, showed that very clearly. So, yeah, absolutely. Mm.
I don't know if I qualify as a tech bro, but I know that it's actually not impossible for teachers to be trained to become somewhat of tech bros themselves and be able to collaborate and create things.
No, it's very helpful if it can be used as a tool for the proper thing. I'm sure it will be helpful. But I mean, to generate an OMR sheet means actually to make questions which will transform themselves into answers on that sheet. So that end is not possible.
And as
Other
teachers,
things are
you know,
definitely possible, I'm sure.
yeah, as teachers, you realize that, and as if teachers are part of that kind of process, I I'm pretty sure like we will not end up at with uh, that
Yeah,
kind of application. Just,
you're right when you say that it depends on who develops it. If it comes top down, basically, very soon it will be misused. Definitely. And teachers will still have that pressure, that we need to learn how to do it. Because I guess it will work out that way. But anyway. Hmm. No, I mean, Harshita, I'm not saying that it ought not to be done. What I'm
Yeah, yeah,
saying
I
is,
get that. I get what you said. Yeah.
yeah.
I know
I
the
mean, what?
pressure is definitely a very important factor because on top of everything else that they have to do, now they have to learn this other completely alien thing and then use it, which is hard.
So you need to tell them it's a cool thing to do because it connects them with the student.
Yeah, yeah,
That,
that's
that's
true.
the thing. So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's very enabling if you can do it because it gets a lot of stuff out of the way from what I understand. So, yeah.
Yeah, the last week with the teacher training program that happened here at EFLU, when I had teachers write circulars and emails using ChatGPT, they were so excited that
Mm.
they were really really excited about the fact that they no longer have to sit and create like draft
Compose something.
circulars and
Mm.
letters to the parent, things like that.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
I
All the
think they
best.
know. I think they know that it's cool. It's just that they're still a little intimidated by it. But I think over time, with a little bit of training and everything, they'll get there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we turned this pretty much into how to make worksheets for BA class, basically. So I think we'd better stop. Yeah. Where are the people who are conducting this thing? Rafid is there still, but I think he left us.
Hello, am I audible? Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Krishna Priya from MA Comparative First Year. And on behalf of the entire department, I want to extend my warm regards to Harshitha for providing insights into the implications of AI in the domain of education. We've also been fortunate to be having Nirmal, who enlightened us on ChatGPT and its influences. Thank you to everyone for your presence in this meeting and asking questions enthusiastically and participating in this discussion. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for giving us the opportunity as
Well, we'd love to see you
well.
frequently,
I have
whatever.
a lot
Yeah.
to think about.
Hmm. On all sides.
Yes.
Okay. See you then. Bye, Nirmal.
Have a good night, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Night.
Bye.